I live in Florida, and this incident happened about 3 weeks after Hurricane Irma, so not that long ago. Back in July, the ex and I had just finalized the divorce, and I moved into a gated neighborhood where every house was rented out by the same rental company/landlords. It's a very small neighborhood, with about 15 houses tops. All 15 houses are bordered around a man-made lake, with the backyards facing that lake. No one really has a fenced backyard. When you walk out your back door, you see the lake in front of you, and your neighbor's backyards on each side of you. Everyone in the neighborhood seemed very close. Someone was always hosting a family-friendly party or barbecue, or having people over to watch sports. I was, and still am, depressed about my divorce, so I never partook in these particular social gatherings. The only person I got to know was my next-door neighbor, Steve, an active Navy soldier with a huge love for guns. Steve is the true hero in this nightmare. My daughter, Alice, is 4 years old, and I get her every weekend. Alice's bedroom window faces the backyard towards the lake, and I spoil that girl to death. She truly is my everything, and I count down the days to the weekend every week just to be with her. That's why I was upset when Irma came, and I had to go almost 3 weekends without seeing her. The weekend before the storm, she was with her mom. Then obviously, the weekend of the storm, she was with her mom too. Then on top of that, the weekend after, she had to be with her mom because my power was still out. The humidity was so bad that week that I slept in my daughter's room the whole week because she has the only room with a window that faced the lake. I opened the window, exposing just the window screen, so the wind from the lake could cool the room as much as possible while I slept. Eventually the power comes back, and Alice starts visiting me again like normal. That was when the nightmares started. My daughter would complain about the singing lady, and how she didn't like her anymore. I thought maybe she was referring to one of my ex's friends, or one of the teachers at her school. Maybe there was a teacher at her school that sang to the kids that she didn't like. That Saturday night, Alice woke up in the middle of the night screaming bloody murder. I ran into her room and turned on the light and found her hiding under her covers. I asked her what was wrong, and all she could do was point into an empty corner of her room and say, "Look, look!" There was nothing there. She was acting as if she saw a ghost. After I calmed her down, she started to talk about the singing lady again. "Please tell the singing lady not to come back. Please, Daddy, make her go away." Obviously, she was having nightmares, right? I showed her there was nothing in the closet and nothing under the bed, and there was nothing to be afraid of. She calmed down and went back to sleep. I went back to my room and quickly started to fall asleep. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes before Alice comes running into my room screaming, "She's back! She's back!" Alice absolutely refused to go back to her room, so I let her sleep with me. The next morning, Sunday morning, I took Alice out to breakfast and we stopped by Target to pick up a baby monitor. I haven't used one since her mom and I were still married, but I wanted to easily be able to hear if and when she started having these nightmares again, so I could respond quicker. After I set them up, I showed Alice how they worked to give her assurance that I could hear her and that she was safe. That night she slept soundly and didn't make a peep all night. The following weekend, Alice had to stay with her mother again because she caught a stomach virus from one of her little friends at school. It was Saturday night, and I was sound asleep in my bed. Around 2 a.m. is when I heard it. A woman's voice humming a soft nursery rhyme through the baby monitor. The humming and soft singing got louder and clearer as the voice got closer to the monitor. I wasn't dreaming. I could hear a woman softly singing lullabies in my daughter's bedroom. I've never been so scared and dumbfounded in my life. I was feeling a mixture of pure terror and disbelief. The voice then spoke out. "Alice, sweetie, are you awake?" Adrenaline shot through my veins. I jumped out of bed and locked my bedroom door. I picked up my cell and called Steve from next door. He didn't waste a second. As soon as I got off the phone with him, I heard him storm out his back door screaming, "Don't you fucking move!" I ran outside and found him aiming a shotgun at a woman crouched outside my daughter's window. The one I had left open after Irma and never closed. Steve quickly dropped his guard when he recognized the woman. It was Jean, the neighborhood maintenance man/woman. Steve's wife came running out after him and confirmed that it was her, but Jean played dumb. She said she was near my daughter's window because she was doing her weekly patrol for gators and thought she saw one approach our house from the lake. Bull fucking shit. That bitch was singing, and she called out to my daughter by name. Yes, it's true that there have been a few gator spottings around the neighborhood, and yes, part of Jean's job was to patrol the lake at night every now and then, but at 2 a.m. I obviously knew it was bullshit, and even though neither Steve or his wife called her out on it, I could tell from the look on their faces that they didn't believe her either. The next morning I went over to Steve's house to thank him and tell him exactly what had happened. He told me Jean and her husband had been known to be a little cuckoo, but this is by far the craziest thing that's happened. Steve helped me install metal bars on Alice's window that afternoon. This happened just yesterday. To be honest, although I read this subreddit to creep myself out, I'm not really posting this for you guys to read. I'm posting it because I need to talk about it, even if no one's listening. Because I'm still scared, and I need to let it out, and I thought this would be an appropriate place to do so. I know that I could probably have handled this better, and that there were things I should and shouldn't have done, but I don't really want to hear about it. It doesn't matter what I should have done, because it's already happened. I'm a small, very weak woman, 5'6" and 118 pounds. I'm a university student who lives with my mom. I take my city subway system to and from school, and I've never had any problems with it before. On Mondays and Wednesdays, I have a class that ends 7:15 p.m., 1915 military time. I've never been concerned about it because the route from my classroom to the train station goes through a segment of downtown that's filled with high-class hotels, so it's very well lit, and there's always police around. Not to mention that a lot of my classmates also ride the train and take the same route. But yesterday, I had to go to the bathroom after class, so by the time I got to the train station, all of my classmates had already left on their own trains. Part of me thinks that if I had just held it in, my night would have gone much smoother. I got to the train station and sat down on a bench to wait. I have these huge over-ear Bluetooth headphones, the kind that are also an accessory. Yesterday I was just using them as earmuffs, and I didn't actually have any music playing. But these are quality headphones, so outside sound is still pretty muffled even with them off. I was sitting there with my headphones on, playing Pokemon on my 3DS with a bald man at the other end of the bench. Some guy walks up and wants to sit between us, so I scoot over without being asked because that's just what you do. The new guy starts talking to bald guy. I can't hear what they're saying because of the headphones. Then new guy turns and gives me this friendly pat on the back and says something to me. I pulled my headphones off one ear because I thought he wanted something. The guy just kind of babbles at me. I couldn't really understand what he was saying because I don't hear very well in the first place. My standard thing for when this happens is to ask them to repeat themselves, or just kind of smile and nod, which is what I did. He then finally speaks up more and asks my name, holds out his hand to shake. I say my name and go to shake his hand. Instead of shaking it, he pulls it up and kisses the back. And that's when I knew that things weren't quite right. He starts asking me about myself. First about how old I am, then if I drink alcohol, then about my game and the progress Nintendo has made since putting it out. He goes on about alcohol for a while, asking how much I drink and talking about how much he drinks. The whole time he's sitting so close and leaning over me, speaking very fast and in something between a mumble and a normal speaking voice. I was really uncomfortable, and over this guy's head I was giving panic looks at bald guy. I know he saw those looks. He would meet my eyes and then look away. Creepy guy asked me some more stuff, about what train stop I go to and where I live, which I avoid answering. He mentions that he needs to get off one stop after Uptown Station, which is the station I need to get off at. For info, we were at Downtown Station. I live along the train line, and you can see my condo from Uptown Station. Literally, it's at the end of the road that Uptown Station is on, in a T formation. Between Downtown Station and Uptown Station, there are 5 other stations. The train comes, and I quickly say, "Well, this is my train. Bye, sir," and get the hell away from him and onto the train. I remember fervently hoping he wouldn't follow me. He didn't follow at first, so I didn't think he would be getting on the train. I sat down in a completely empty seat and put my bag on the seat next to me. And the train has benches with 2 seats on each bench. If I had known that he would be getting on the train, I would have sat down next to one of the women on there and pretended that I knew her. Creepy guy got on right before the train left. Before he did, the bald guy who had sat down in front of me smiled at me and said, "Don't worry, he's just a weirdo, but he's harmless." I can't tell you how pissed off I am at this fuckhead. Creepy guy might have been harmless to him, but I was terrified and looked to him for help multiple times throughout the train ride, and his bald-headed fuckwit would look me in the eye, acknowledge my fear, and then look away and make conversation with other men on the train. Now this next part, I don't really have an explanation for. I know that this was dumb, but it's like I froze up and my southern-bred manners kicked in. The guy came onto the train and started looking around for me. I froze. He spotted me, walked up and said, "Hey, can I sit next to you?" I wanted to say no so badly, but I couldn't speak, and my body just went into autopilot and moved my bag off the seat and onto my lap. I was trapped between him and the wall of the train. His entire body was just pressed up against me. There wasn't an inch of him that wasn't pressed against my side. I was just kind of frozen, facing straight forward and staring at my game. When he talked, he did it with our cheeks only an inch apart. He started mumbling and chattering at me again, and I could barely understand him. He asked me about my game again, then got into weirder topics. He asked if I listened to rap music, asked if I dated black guys, if I had a boyfriend, if I had a girlfriend. He asked if I lived alone, where I lived. As we got closer and closer to my stop, I got more and more scared. I was scared that he was going to follow me home, because it's a straight shot from the station to my condo. You literally can't miss it. I was giving panicked eyes to everyone there. Men, women, people out the window, anyone who would look at me. But they all looked away, and creepy guy saw me give the looks multiple times. It's just kind of confirmation to me that he had bad intentions. If a normal, albeit weird guy who was trying to make conversation with a girl saw her making panic eyes to people, they would realize something was up and that they were being creepy. But this guy just didn't give a damn. I don't know how I can properly express how terrified I was, guys. He pulled out dozens of folded up papers out of his pocket and started sorting through them. He picked one and started writing on it, all the while mumble-chattering about racist Chinese ladies and racist bald guy. Meanwhile, my stop was coming up, and I was still panicking. My stop comes, and I stand up. He had his legs up so I couldn't get out. I very forcefully say, "Sir, this is my stop. I need to go." He scrambles up and out of my way. A billion more papers, a folded-up notebook, and a non-open condom packet fell out of his pockets. I get to the door. The train comes to a stop, and my fears are proven true. He gathers up all his things and follows me out. Remember that he said the stop he needed was the one after the stop I got off at. I managed to text one-handed in my pocket and send, "Help, man follow, Uptown Station," to my mom. She doesn't reply. I managed to turn on my headphones and connect them to my phone, again one-handed in my pocket, and call her. She still doesn't answer. I'm nearly hyperventilating. I try to move fast enough to lose this guy since he's dropping his shit everywhere, but he gets himself organized and catches up to me before I reach the escalators. I've been continually calling my mom this whole time. The creepy guy follows me up the escalator and out the front gates. At this point I stop. There was no way in hell I was going to go home and show this guy where I lived. He asked me which way I was going next. I sort of lied and said that I was waiting for my mom to come pick me up. He said that he would wait with me. I tried to convince him that it would be okay for him to leave, and he insisted on staying. At this point, I pulled out my phone and was calling my mom publicly. He leans in super close again and goes, "Oh, I know her. Good-looking lady. Good-looking lady." And starts going on about how he knows my mom and how pretty and nice she is. Which is bullshit. My mom is a high-class accountant who works for a massive scholarly organization. And this guy is certainly not the type of persons he comes into contact with. I give up on calling my mom. He gives me the paper he had been writing on. It had, assuming it was real, his full name, email address, and all his contact information. He kept saying to call him if I wanted a job. He then pulls out another paper and pen and hands it to me, asks for all my info. I gave him a fake number and handed it back. "No, your full name too." I told him that I was sorry, but my mom wouldn't be very happy if I gave it to him. He starts trying to convince me that it would be okay. At this point, I panic and shove the paper with my fake number at him and tell him that I have to go and just literally run the fuck away, down the stairs to the street. My mom finally calls me back. Her phone had been on silent. I was terrified and kept looking behind me to see if he was still following me, because he started to when I started to run. Mom leaves the condo and runs towards the station, and we meet in the middle. I've never been so relieved to see my mom. She brought me home and kept an eye out over our shoulders for the guy. I still have the paper with the supposed full name and contact info. I feel like I need to share the story because I have to go back to school on both those stations today, and I was terrified he would still be there. He was a black guy wearing a baseball cap, and I feel terrible about this, but anytime I saw a black guy wearing any kind of hat, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Thank God it wore off by the time I got to class, but I'm still scared I'm going to encounter him again. After following this subreddit for a while, I always end up thinking back to a situation that happened to me in my childhood. I don't usually post anything, so I made an account just to share this story. This happened when I was about 9. Keep in mind I was very short, still am, and was the smallest girl in my age group, so I was an easy target to say the least. When I was young, my family moved us from a third world country in Asia to a western safe country. During that time, foreigners weren't that widespread here, so in fear of being discriminated against, my parents weren't fond of asking for help, even from the police. My family was not well off, and to keep afloat, my parents had to work long hours, often leaving me home alone for a few hours after school. I had been walking home from school with my neighbor Dan, who was my age, when I noticed he kept looking behind us with a troubled expression on his face, as if something was wrong. Every time I turned around, though, I saw no one. Whenever I asked him what was up, he just dismissed it and said nothing. Thinking back on it now, I think he just didn't want to scare me. I brushed it off as Dan playing a prank on me, and we went home even though my gut was telling me something wasn't right. After about 20 minutes of being at home, I suddenly hear a loud knock on the door. This is very unusual, as no one usually visited, so to me this was already a red flag. I crept to a window that had a view of the porch, and discreetly lifted the corner of the curtain to see who it was without being detected. I saw a tall man, around mid to late 20s, short hair, and he was wearing a long black coat with black pants. What scared me was his demeanor. He looked very tense, almost angry, and was glaring at the door very hard. I barely saw him blink. All the while he was constantly knocking. I watched him for a couple minutes, until it seemed like he was leaving. I immediately called my parents, and they told me to never answer the door and that it was probably a door-to-door salesperson or something. I thought that maybe they were right, until the knocking began again. Only this time, he was pounding against the door like he wanted to break it. I was so terrified. He kept pounding, and and after a solid 10 minutes he shouted, "I know you're in there, little girl." I nearly lost my shit. I frantically kept calling my parents, telling them what I heard and that I think this man was going to hurt me. My parents, not wanting to get in trouble for leaving a 9-year-old home alone, didn't want to call the police, and kept telling me if I just hunkered down in the room furthest in the house and waited, he would go away. To be fair, my parents aren't horrible or uncaring. The house is built solidly, and there was no way of entering or exiting except for the heavy front door where the man was. Even the windows aren't easily accessible, but all this meant to me was that I was trapped. I remember crying so hard, and being terrified for my life, but trying to be silent, just in the off chance the man could hear me. By this point, the man kept alternating between pounding the door and staying very still and silent. I knew because I kept creeping back to the window, hoping the silence meant that he was going away, but he was always there waiting, giving that same intense, hateful stare, as if he wanted me to feel it through the door. It felt like he had been standing there for hours, but in reality this whole ordeal lasted about 20 minutes. Thankfully, after that 20 minutes, I heard nothing and couldn't see him either. Not long after that, my mom came home early to check up on me. She checked around the whole house, the surrounding area, and even asked the neighbors, but the man left no trace and no one else had seen him. The only sign he was there was a couple of scratches on the door. When Dan was questioned by the adults, he just said that he had noticed a man following us from near the school area, but the man kept his distance so he couldn't really get a good look at him. He also wasn't sure whether it was just someone who happened to be walking the same way as us, so he didn't want to say anything to scare me. We never found out what the man wanted with me. After that, I wasn't allowed to be home alone for a long time. Instead of going home, I'd go hang out at Dan's house after school until one of my parents picked me up. As far as I know, I never saw the man again. Honestly, I wish they called the police, because after that day, I became permanently paranoid about strangers. To this day, I still get anxiety if someone knocks on my door, even if I'm expecting someone to be there.